pjnet.tv on, today is Monday, the 13th of April. We will be going live in our brand new studio, which is studio number 8. We're recording, we're streaming, we have our guest waiting, and we'll go to studio 8 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, welcome to pjnet.tv with a brand new look. Okay, we are migrating to the new computer that I have been talking about for some time. And we're able to do some things now that we couldn't do in the past. And I'm excited to share those with you. Now, many of you are under the opinion, or of the opinion, that Andy Clapp is going to be here any minute now, because after all, it is the second Monday of the month. However, if you were living anywhere on the East Coast, you're aware that there was a storm last night and tornadoes have ravaged the area where he lives. Now, he's okay, but the power's out. So he contacted me this morning, and so we were scrambling around. And I want to, let's see, do a shout out if Alyssa is there. I don't see her presently in the chat room, but if she's listening, Star Ayers, who was with us just last week, directed me to her, and she has several clients that she represents, and one of them was able to fill in tonight. And Bryan Davis is here with us. Bryan, welcome to pjnet.tv. I am so glad to see you.
I'm glad to be here, Coach. I'll be a pinch hitter tonight.
Well, let's see how we do. Bryan, now, you and I have something in common. You spent 20 years, before you ever wrote a book, in the computer industry and did okay for yourself. And all of a sudden,
Yes.
Something happened. What happened?
Yes. Well, all my kids, my wife and I have 7 children. All of them were homeschooled, and we were having trouble teaching them how to write. They did not like to write. So I got this bright idea that maybe I could write a story with them and get them excited about the writing process. So I would write a chapter, and they'd give me their ideas about what should happen next, and I would try to write the next chapter. And the story just kept building and building and building. And they all ended up becoming pretty good writers. But the part that I didn't expect was that I would create a passion in me to write. I got the writing bug. And for years after that, I started developing the craft and trying to get better at writing. So that's how it started.
Now, so you literally, your children were very influential in not only the creation, but the content, I guess, and the theme of your first book. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I had, each character, each child in the story would kind of parallel one of the kids that I had. So they each got invested in one of the characters. And the themes that were interested, action, adventure, things like that, they definitely had a big influence on that. That book never got published. It had too much of a personal imprint on it, I think, but it was definitely a good starting point for all of us.
So you didn't ultimately publish that book, but you kept going. And what was your first one that you felt like? What was the breakthrough for you? What the first book that made it?
Well, the reason that first book was not published because it just wasn't worthy. I had a lot to learn about writing. So I started going to writers' conferences and reading books on writing, and I got better at it. But about 2 years into that process, one night I had a dream. I had a dream about a boy who could breathe fire. Now, sometimes, you have dreams like that. It just means you had too much pepperoni in your pizza last night. But in this case, I really felt like there's something special about that dream. I needed to remember that dream. So I told my oldest son about it. James, he was 13 years old at the time, and he said, "Dad, you should write a story about this boy who can breathe fire, because then it'd be a lot better than that other stuff you've been writing." I said, "What? I thought you liked that other story." He said, "Well, I do, sort of, but if you wrote this, then it would be a fantasy story. And I love fantasy stories. And it's true. I mean, this guy has read Lord of the Rings 40 times. That's the
Mm,
kind of reader he is.
mm-hmm.
So he and I brainstormed this boy who could breathe fire and created the backstory and figured out how he could breathe fire. And we decided that his parents used to be dragons and they were transformed back in the time of King Arthur. So we came up with this wild story and I started writing it. Uh, it took me about a year to write the first draft. And then I started sending that out to publishers, and I got lots of rejection notices. But over an 8-year period, uh, I got more than 200 rejection notices until finally this one little company called AMG in Chattanooga, Tennessee, decided to take a chance on it. And several 100,000 copies sold later, they were glad they did.
Oh man, 8 years, 200 rejections. Really?
Yes, yes. And that was back when we didn't have email. So I got these in the mail. I have a folder, stacked really high, of just loaded with uh, rejection letters, and I save them uh, because I like to go back to some of the publishers and editors and say, "You
I saw it coming.
remember when you rejected me?"
I saw that coming. Yeah, I do the same thing when a bank turns me down for a loan. I like to drive up in the Corvette, Hey, come. Shouldn't. Probably that's what Jesus would have done, I'm sure.
Well, I always do it in a laughing, fun way because a lot of the editors are my friends now. They get a kick out of it, even though it might sting a little bit. I don't know.
So, so was this your first published book? What was it? Raising
It was
Dragons.
Raising Dragons. Yes,
Okay,
I have that one
so
right
this
here.
dragon thing, you're into dragons. There you go.
Well, I wasn't really into dragons so much. It was the boy who could breathe fire. It was the dream that made me interested in this concept. But it was my son who came up with the idea because first he said, we could make say that this boy was born to dragons, and I said, well, how could that be? Did he hatch out of an egg or what?
See a reptile.
So it was yeah, it was his influence and his fantasy generating mind that helped me put it all together. I couldn't have done it without him.
So this began sort of a series of dragon themed, almost like sequels started coming along.
Yes, there are 12 books in that story world, divided into three separate series. So the Dragons in Our Midst story world has three series: Dragons in Our Midst, Oracles of Fire, and Children of the Bard. And then a bigger company, Zondervan, which is
Ah,
now
hmm.
HarperCollins Christian Publishers, asked me to write another Dragons series, and I did. It's a 4-book series called Dragons of Starlight. And I have yet another one with dragons called Tales of Starlight. So that means I have 19 books with dragons as a device.
Mm. Now you said that Zonderman, which is a Christian, you know,
Zondervan, yeah.
yeah. Why would they be interested in a book about dragons?
Well, I became known as the dragons author, and since the Dragons in Our Midst did so well, they wanted a piece of that action. So they wanted me to write another dragon story because that's what I was known for. That was my niche.
Earlier today, we were talking. You spent 20 years in the computer industry. You and I have followed pretty much parallel paths up to that point, anyway. I kind of stayed in
Mhm.
technology, but you didn't.
No, I didn't. Although I still use some of that stuff. I can write my own websites. I know HTML and some of the other fancy things you do with websites. I can still write calls to databases and APIs. You know what that
Hmm.
is?
I know
Programming
exactly what
interfaces.
that is.
Sure. So it's not foreign to me. I can figure things out. You show me a new program and I can figure out how to use it. Like I typeset some of my own novels in InDesign and pretty good at Photoshop. So
Hmm.
just being familiar with all the computer guts that I learned, it's easy for
Hmm.
me to learn anything involved with computers.
But you invested 20 years in that and then left?
It's because of the writing. The way it was working out was I was wondering, why am I not getting any of my books published? I believe God opened this door for me. Gave me this dream, and the story I think is really great now. I've revised it so many times over these 8 years. Why am I not getting published? So I asked God about it. About time, right? And
After you had
I felt
exhausted
like,
all of your options, yeah.
yeah, I was like, I mean, I did pray regularly, as a good boy should, but I finally, just gave up and said, Lord, why is this not getting published? And I felt like he was saying, well, here's the problem. I didn't hear anything verbally, but got this impression saying, here's the problem. You write these stories and adventures where you have these young people go out and do dangerous things and they take huge risks. And
Hmm.
the only thing to catch them is their faith in me. So, but what about you? You're on this adventure to try to become an author. What dangers are you facing? What risks are you taking? And I was thinking, nothing really. You know, if if I don't make it as an author, I have this computer job to fall back on. So I was wondering, God, do you want me to quit my job? I have 7 kids. I got a mortgage on a house. How could I do that? And I felt like God was saying, well, it
Trust
depends.
me.
I mean,
Trust me.
he said, do you want to be a hero like what you're writing about? Or do you just want to write about it and then be a hypocrite? Whoa. And I was thinking about it, if I am teaching through my stories to take risks and face dangers and do great things for God, sacrifice and have faith, and I wasn't willing to do it myself,
Hmm.
what does that make me?
A
I
hypocrite.
think that would make me a hypocrite. So I felt like that there was 2 doors in front of me. One was labeled hero and the other was labeled hypocrite. And I had to decide which one to go through. So I said, all right, I'm going to quit my job. So I did with no book contracts. I quit my job, said, I'm going to trust in you completely. So for 8 years before that, never got a book contract. Within 1 year of making that decision, I had contracts for 6 books.
Oh, man. So I can understand being, I can deal with God like you were doing. But then when you make that decision, then you have to tell your wife. How'd that go?
A lot of people ask me that. It's one of my favorite questions because I went to my wife and told her that, and she stared at me and said, let's do this.
Your wife needs to go on the
She has
speaking circuit. You're right.
she has been the most wonderful, amazing support every step of the way. I mean, we'll be married 40 years in December, and she has just been incredible, always supportive, no matter what.
When when uh, when the two of you got married some 40 years ago, was she taking a risk?
Oh, yes. People even tell me, they look at her, saw how beautiful she was, and she said, Bryan, you really married up, didn't you?
Well, people say
Yeah,
that about me
yes,
too. I
I
say,
did.
but you don't understand. I had a lot of money back then.
Yeah, but I didn't.
So,
So she was taking a big risk. I mean, maybe she saw a lot of potential, and I'm very glad for that.
all right. Well, we've got about 6 minutes left. You've explained that while the book is about dragons and fiction and fantasy and all that, but the biblical theme is based on faith. These the characters in your book ultimately rely on faith. Is that connected directly in the book to faith in God or some higher spiritual being, or is it more faith in themselves?
In Dragons in Our Midst, it's definitely faith in God. It's a very strong, overt Christian theme. I mean, they pray, they talk about God, and there's actually the gospel message. people come to Christ, it's overtly Christian, without a doubt. Some of my other series are not as overt; they're more thematic.
Hmm.
Uh, Sacrificial heroism and mercy, forgiveness, courage. Even though God might not be directly
Hmm.
addressed, there still have those themes. So I have both. I have both overtly Christian and covertly Christian books.
So, in an overt Christian book, that's one thing. But you've sold what, 1 million books, somewhere along
About
uh,
1.2 million, something
one
like that.
point.
Yeah.
Well, I need to know exactly 1.275. Is it divided? Does anyway?
I
But
think it's. I think I'm rounding it up, 1.18 or something like that.
but if what's driving you is a faith-based theme, it's easy to get some feedback when you do some kind of work that's nonfiction, where people say this helped God speak to me through this book, but in fiction that's a little harder. Do you get any feedback that affirms that you're really reaching them, or you just?
It's absolutely incredible. I've had literally thousands and thousands of letters and email. I save them in a box. I save them in a folder in my email, telling me your books changed my life. They've drawn me closer to God. I'm reading my Bible again. I've heard from 21 different teenagers who said your books kept me from committing suicide. It's just been absolutely incredible. I get emails like that and I just cry. It's just telling me, you saved my life. You saved my soul. You say, well, give thanks to God. So it's been amazing.
We've got a couple minutes, three at the most. You have a new book.
Yes, it's exciting to me because it's called Let the Ghost Speak. I had dreamed the first chapter of this story about 13 years ago, and I knew I wasn't ready to write it because I just didn't feel like I was good enough yet. But it nagged at me and nagged at me for all those years, and finally I felt I'm ready to write this book. So I did, and Mountain Brook Inc. decided to pick it up, and the print book is out, and the ebook comes out in 2 days, and I am so excited about this story. I think it's my best story to date.
And it will be out.
April 15th is when the ebook comes out. It'll be on Amazon, and the print book is available. You can order it anywhere because it's distributed through Amazon and Ingram. It's historical fiction combined with murder mystery and supernatural psychological thriller. So it's a blend of genres. Takes place in 1860 Paris, France. Uh, it's it's so exciting to me. I could tell you the whole story, but I don't think we have time.
I don't think. Have you ever been to Paris?
I have not, but oh, did I research it? I read books, YouTube videos, wrote to people who lived there. So it's a lot of research, but I'd love to go.
It's I have, and I had a bad impression of the French because I had been to many of the French islands in the Caribbean,
Mm-hmm.
and the way they treated or didn't treat, and they were dirty. They threw, I mean, trash everywhere. France is nothing like that. France
Oh,
is no, nothing like that. Very
well, we
clean,
once
very.
had we had an exchange student from France once who lived with us for several months, and she was wonderful, just so friendly and kind. So it was a
Well,
great experience.
well, I hope you get to go. you
Well,
wrote,
me too.
yeah, maybe you'll meet Napoleon. I don't have a high. I did a Google search on French military victories. The only thing that comes up is Napoleon. I mean, they haven't won since, but
Well, there are ghosts in this book, so if I met the ghost of Napoleon, that would be quite an experience.
we got it. Well, Bryan, hey, listen, that's an interesting story, and thank you for sharing it. And in the chat room, I'm seeing very favorable comments. I hope you'll take a chance to stop by in just a minute when we jump off the air and meet some of the people that have been saying all these nice things about you. The and you bailed me out, Bryan. Folks, you don't know when things were going at breakneck speed this afternoon, and I'm calling Alyssa. She's calling Bryan. She told Bryan to call me. I thought he knew something about what the conversation. He was clueless, and I'm assuming. Yeah,
I said, "What are we going to do, Coach?"
Yeah,
what are we doing?
It was kind of awkward, and I finally said, "Look, I got to get some coffee. I'll call you back in a few minutes. Go look at our website and see what he didn't know about us. We didn't know about him. It was a little awkward, folks. But Bryan, you have come through and really rescued me. We've enjoyed your company, and we wish you the very
pleasure.
Oh man, and you bailed me out, folks. Andy will be here, by the way, Thursday night at 9 p.m. Hopefully the power will be on by then. But Andy, thank you. I mean, Bryan, thank you so much, for sharing with us. And God bless you. Good luck with your book. And everybody, I'm going to put it up here one last time. I put it up here before. If we didn't cover anything here, go to daviscrossing.com. Anything that we did discuss can be fact-checked there. Anything we didn't discuss will be there too. So I hope you'll take a chance to do that. Bryan, thanks again for bailing us out. You did great. It's been a real pleasure.
You're welcome.
All righty.
I hope I can come back sometime.
I hope you can too. And then Bryan Davis, what a joy, folks. God just took care of that, didn't he? That was pretty fun. Okay. Hey, listen, we have got Casper Stockham coming up at the bottom of the hour. I've only got a few minutes to take all this stuff down and put it back together and all that. And I appreciate all of you who are live in the chat room at pjnet.tv. Hey, if you're watching this on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, hey, we are so glad you're doing that. But there are so many friends waiting for you at pjnet.tv. You can watch it there and fellowship with everybody else. I got to go. I'll leave you with 2 questions. I'd like you to give some thought to this. The first question is, what is the boldest thing you have ever done for Jesus Christ? The second question is, well, how long ago was that? The challenge for myself, and I hope you'll accept the challenge too, is to never be satisfied with either